Alright, welcome to Tech Mode. Today I'm reviewing the HP Reverb G2. That's right, I bought it for $300. It was on sale for $300. First off, I gotta say, people like Thrill and whoever else would review the Reverb G2, give a very positive review, but then they'd switch back to the Index, and I always thought, well, maybe it's not that good if they're just switching back to the Index format. Because I personally daily drive an Index for over 2 years at this point. Now I've switched to the Reverb G2 completely. I didn't use the Index controllers. I used just the Reverb G2 and the controllers it comes with for about 2 to 3 weeks. I forgot when I got it at this point. But the major point of this is to really test the Reverb G2 on its own. And I have to say, it is very impressive. The first impression I had when I put it on, if you watched my unboxing, is it is very light. It feels about half the weight of the Index. And that's pretty great. I don't really think I would complain or even mention the weight of a VR headset until I put something much, much lighter on. And this is a very lightweight headset, which I figured with the cameras and stuff, it would be maybe even heavier than the Index, but very impressive. It does feature a top strap, standard Velcro. It's a little bit less fancy than the Index. It doesn't have the crank on the back to tighten. However, it's not really a big deal because once you adjust it, it's fine. It has the same headphones and microphones as the Index, which is incredible. They sound better than my Blue Snowball. I mean, they sound great. But the main reason I wanted the Reverb G2 was the screens. The resolution on this is 2160 by 2160 per eye. Now the Index is 1600 by 1440 per eye. So a good way to compare it would be like a 1440p monitor versus a 4K monitor, but for each eyeball, pretty much. And holy crap, it is good. So I'm directly comparing the Index to the Reverb G2 because the Index is, or has been, my main daily driver for 2 years at this point. And this is now my new daily driver. 100% of the time, this is it. I'm not going back to the Index. So, the Index, I noticed there's a lot of blur around every single bit of text. There's a lot of like pixel switching issues, like where pixels go from one color to black to a different color. There's like a ghost shadow following everything. I even turned my Index down from 144 hertz to 120 or even to 90 hertz, which is what the Reverb G2 is at. And it still had this like pixel shifting, I think it's pixel shift. It's like shadow effect around everything. So you move your head. Let's say there's a word that says valve on it. You'll see like a shadow valve behind it wherever you look. Left, right, up, or down. It's because the pixels can't shift fast enough. And even at 90 hertz, which is much lower than the 144 hertz, I noticed it. And the fonts are a lot more difficult to read. There's many, many, many things that I just couldn't read on the Index. And I didn't even notice because I played it for so long. I didn't know that was like, that I couldn't read that, I guess. However, Reverb G2, it's night and day difference. It is really incredible just how clear and precise the screens are. So the controllers, compared to the Index, the controllers of the Reverb G2 are the worst feature. The Reverb G2 uses inside-out tracking, so it does not require any base stations at all. It completely relies on the cameras on it in order to get a sense of where it is in physical space, right? So, the Index uses base stations, which are expensive and cause a lot of issues. So the Index uses base stations, which are really almost a point of failure. However, they do give you ultimately precise tracking. But the Reverb G2 uses inside-out tracking for not only the headset, but the controllers as well. The controllers have these glowy ring things, and it tracks them pretty well. Like, I played many, many games just fine on the Reverb G2 without Index controllers or anything. I just started playing Steam games on it. It was a matter of so I played several games on the Reverb G2 with the standard G2 controllers, and that includes Beat Saber, Skyrim, and Half-Life Alyx. I played all 3 of these games just fine. I would say the biggest conflict I had was in Skyrim, trying to do archery. The main issue is that when you pull the string back in Skyrim, you're going out of tracking range once you go behind your head. Nope, because all the tracking is like to the sides and the front, if you go behind your head, you instantly lose tracking on the controller, and so it becomes a lot less reliable on the controllers. However, 99% of the time in every other game, tracking was fine. I didn't really have an issue with it. One benchmark that I have for games is if it's an improvement, I can beat my past scores in Beat Saber. And so, like, when I got my Index versus my Vive, as soon as I played my Index, I was beating my old scores in Beat Saber because the frame rate was higher and the screen was much clearer than the Vive. And the same thing happened with my Reverb G2. The first song I played in Beat Saber, I beat my own high score in. I'm not sure if it's because of the clarity. I mean, the refresh rate is much slower. It's 90 hertz versus 144 hertz. However, the 90 hertz is fine. Enough rambling. In conclusion, Reverb G2, the screen is definitively better than the Index. I will say the controllers are fully functional. So if you buy a Reverb G2, you're able to play basically any game the Index can play. However, it does not have the finger tracking. It doesn't have the same quality of tracking as the Index. But since it's just so simple, right? The problem with the Index is that it's so expensive because it has the full room base station tracking. Because you're not only just buying an Index, you're buying an Index, you're buying 2 Knuckles controllers, which cost each $150, and you're buying 2 base stations, each costing $150. Each of those have their own chargers. There's so much extra stuff to go with the Index. The Reverb G2, on the other hand, you can just pack it up with the controllers, take the wire with you, go to a friend's house, plug it into their computer, and play VR games very quickly with minimal setup. It is very simple to do. And I will say that kind of portability is the future of VR. I think inside-out tracking is what's going to be the future of it. However, if you are the kind of person that wants to have the best quality full body tracking, the kind of tracking that requires base stations, the Reverb G2 is not for you. However, if you are anybody else that doesn't have a VR headset yet, the Reverb G2, even at $450 or $500, is your headset. I cannot really recommend the Index over the G2 to anybody except for the people that want the full body tracking, super high quality tracking experience of the Index. And that's pretty much it. Yep, I spent $300, even at $450. I think it's worth it. The amount of clarity that I got out of this is truly, it feels like the future. It feels like the screens that the Index should have had, but it never did. Final closing thoughts. Yes, I highly recommend the Reverb G2. I also highly recommend Reverb G2 for people that have an Index or have had an Index for a long time and are wanting a better quality display. This is it. And I will say, because I've already done this, the Reverb G2 plus the Index Knuckles controllers is a superb, like truly superb VR experience. It is really the best visual plus the best controller experience you can buy in VR for less than like $2,000. Basically, the only thing better you're going to get visually would be a MetaQuest Pro. However, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. You can check out other people's reviews of it. That's $1,500. This thing is $450. If you don't have VR and you're looking to buy a VR headset, I would get this. 9 times out of 10, you could just get this. Because you could even do the math. You could buy a couple base stations, even the old version 1 base stations from the Vive, to go with it, buy a couple of Knuckles controllers, or even just keep the controllers this has, but buy your full body tracking dots or whatever you want to do, the Tundra trackers or the Vive trackers with the base stations. You're going to have an excellent experience for less than the Index. It is so much cheaper than the Index with so much better of a screen. I really, really, really did not expect the screen to have such a massive impact. Alright, that's it for the review. Be expecting a follow-up within 1 to 2 weeks on the Reverb G2 about using Index controllers with it, because I spent a few hours, I spent way too many hours trying to make it work. I'm going to have a simple, straightforward guide on getting Index controllers to work with this without any dongles. If you have like an Index set, you can just use the controllers with this for free. You just have the most optimal experience possible. Check that out. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Please tune in next time for my awesome HP Reverb G2 plus Valve Index Knuckles controllers setup and review guide, whatever it is. Good night.